Let's start off tonight, and as I said, we're not far away from Sydney and Fremantle. Let's start off tonight with the North Melbourne game, Hurdy. This result came from nowhere, but in the end, it was the Roos in a canter.
Yeah, it was, and it posed a few questions the way that Melbourne finished off the game. But North Melbourne, Jimmy, I just thought the way they finished that last quarter, you see the youngsters coming into the game. I mean, this goal really from Curtis, he's first of three, and really a player who gets his hand on the ball in the forward line. Here's his third goal to fantastic, really crumbling off the pack.
He's certainly got ability and talent, and even when he first came in the game, I think he's got a talent where early you find out whether they're very good natural forwards. They can find space inside forward 50. And for him to do that in his first couple of years, when North Melbourne didn't have a lot of entries, was a highlight. But the Dees just battled moving the ball.
Critical turnover from Taj Waden there that ended up in a McKercher goal. But really, Melbourne tried to move the ball. They tried early on, they tried to kick the ball, they tried to move the ball, but found that they went back to their old style because they just couldn't move the ball.
And for me, Tom, it was around about the North Melbourne midfield, and I guess I took away from that game. It's the first time where you saw all of them really combine well together.
Yep.
I know we've seen big games from LDU, we've seen big games from Jai Simpkin. Shees will have a lot of possessions. But it was a real mix today. We got a glimpse into the future of when they can combine. And the good thing about them is they're all a little bit different. So when we just have a look at the vision, they all participated. They all gave actually something to the game. As I mentioned, LDU, we know he's a high-quality player, and that's why clubs want him, and North Melbourne in particular. But it was their collective work. So Simpkin had 24, a goal, 8 clearance. Sheasel had 28, really got going in the second half, Sheasel. But you can do that if the others are really dynamic as well. He had 28. McKercher 17, a goal. And then Powell 31, but with 8 clearances. And you throw in Bailey Scott, who just keeps pounding up and down the wing. That's what I like. They're all just a little bit different, and it's a big pack. So if you look at the Hawks and their midfield mix, all a bit different. That's what North Melbourne's got.
They blew Melbourne apart. 6 goals from 8 entries in the first 11 minutes that last quarter. It was like it was a procession. It was like it was the other way. And
6 goals in 6 minutes.
Yeah, it was just an incredible performance by Melbourne. But North Melbourne, it begs the question: where are Melbourne at if that can happen to them so quickly in the last quarter?
Well, that's right. We've given North Melbourne a leak. They deserve all the credit they get. We asked last week when they're going to start winning these games. They proved tonight they can, and especially at Marvel Stadium on a quick track with a young team, they can do it.
And the way they move the ball in the back line, they hold it, they move it quite well by quick. But as soon as they get over the centre of the ground, they move it quick. They got Collingwood that way almost last year, and they've got Melbourne again. And
the problem for Melbourne, as you highlight, is they resort to a stoppage game.
Yeah.
But that's if their ball movement doesn't work like Hurdy talked about. But they got pounded as far as centre bounce and as the stoppage game goes. North Melbourne kicked 7 goals from the centre bounce. That's a huge number because you're normally pretty well structured and you've got one of the most dominant ruckmen, which we'll touch on Max Gawn a little bit shortly. But 42 points they beat Melbourne, who just pride themselves on Gawn, Petrarca.
That's their thing, isn't it? And, and today they were unable to do it at Marvel Stadium. And Simon Goodwin lamented the loss after the match.
Yeah, that's tough to watch, and we've got to be better at how we arrest momentum, especially around the centre square when that time happens. But that was the disappointing part that I felt all day that was coming.
How can that happen, Hurdy? How can they know it's coming all day against a team like North Melbourne?
Well, I'm surprised he says he thought it was coming all day. You've been in games where you think the tide's coming against you, but that's when you try, and I'm sure he tried plenty of things. And I think early on they did try to move the ball differently. We got caught out, but I'm surprised that Simon said he felt it coming all day because as the coach, you really need to do something about that.
I just think with Melbourne and the position they're in now, Jimmy, at Norton too, and they talk about moving the ball and changing their offence because for a number of years it's been the same. Maybe they don't have a plan B, and especially when their midfield loses, it could be very difficult for them.
Well, it's not very often we see Melbourne get beat that badly around a stoppage. So they'll probably come back to it and go, well, we've still got one of the best ruckmen we've had in the last 10 years. Petrarca and Oliver are actually in not bad touch considering their layoffs in the last couple of years. So I think they'll still back them in, but it's the mix that you've got to maybe look at. Like, who else are you going to put around
Well, they've tried Ed Langdon so far this year.
But you can have the mix and you can have them in different positions. So that might be things like, do we bring a couple of forwards up and open up the space in front? Do we play really corridor side? So I think they need to explore, all right, stoppage doesn't have to be Max Gawn down a metre in front, the 2 Bulls go at it. It can be different. It can be outside hits. It can be chain out through the front or the back.
I think they have got a plan B. They just didn't work. Like it was their plan A today. It didn't work, so they had to go back to their plan B, which was their plan A, and back to plan B. I think that's I've confused myself.
And their next 4, as we just saw as well, Gold Coast, Geelong, Essendon, Freo, and then Richmond after that. I mean, it's not a hard next 4 because they are playing Fremantle at home, Gold Coast as well. But we'll know a lot more about them in the next few weeks.
Did you say Melbourne, it's not a hard next four? I think the problem for Melbourne is the games are hard to win in that style of football. I don't think Melbourne could ever look at a game and say, well, that's an easy win. Don't think you can do that anyway at AFL level. But that style of football, which is a real tough physical grind, which, credit to them, they keep fronting up each week to try and play that way. There's no doubting their intent and their desire with that stuff.
And their honesty too.
Yeah,
and they're a very honest team, and you love going to watch them because you know what you're going to get. But you say it's not a hard next few games, but it's a crucial next few games.
Simon Goodwin, after the match, he alluded to something which we had no visibility on before the game, and that was some personal issues around Max Gawn. He was beaten in the ruck today by his opponent, Tristan Sherry, and Goodwin spoke about, I guess, some struggles that Gawn's been having off the field after the match.
Our people are really important to us, and Max is one of those guys. And today, I think he'll acknowledge that he got beaten by a really good opponent today. There's a backstory to everyone's performance, and Max is someone that we take enormous pride in, and he's going to continue to be a great leader for this footy club, and he'll be a big part of our response.
So, Simon Goodwin putting this on the table is really interesting. In one sense, it's honest. It gives us an insight into things that are happening off the field, Hurdy. But it also raises a lot of questions around Max Gawn, and my understanding is it's not going to affect him from playing. But do you think Simon Goodwin should be talking about his ruck in this way? Because now the questions are going to be tomorrow, what's going on? I hope he's okay.
I think Simon and Max have a really good relationship, so I think he would have only said it if Max was okay with him saying it. I mean, it's hard. Football's a human. There are things that go on in your life that affect your game of football. If that was it, then that's sad to hear, and hopefully everything will be okay.
One of those ones that I just think will make everyone stand up and just hope he's okay, above all things.
I think he will, and he could have cut that off a couple of sentences before, but the trust is there with Max and Simon. I don't think we walk away going, geez, Max Gawn's not a great ruckman.
No, of course not.
Tristan Sherry was incredible today, and that was one of the main reasons why North Melbourne was so dominant. It was his ruck and follow-up work was massive.
And I think that's what should be celebrated. Sherry's game against the best ruckman in the last 5 to 6 years was incredible and helped them win the game.
Yeah, North Melbourne proving they maybe not the easy beats they have been in the past few years. All right, let's get to this Freo Sydney Swans game, which was an absolute ripper from start to finish. You guys watched it here in the office, and the Sydney Swans, well, they won by 3 points, but it was some work late in the game by a couple of young players that got them over the line.
Proper arm wrestle this was, especially after Freo kicked 4 goals in the first quarter and then 5 for the rest of it. But you mentioned the arm wrestle, apologies there, but it did turn into a moment's game, Hurdy.
Should have kicked this one, boss. This is a big miss.
He's not the best set shot for goal, and probably.
And this is the turnover. This is the turnover that really cost, not costing the game, but that led to the Riley Bice, the second last goal of the game that put the Swans within a kick. That sort of turnover in the middle of the ground. Voss has given his heart. He's given a great game for the day, but that turnover hurts you. Not a bad goal from a guy from wherever here, Riley Bice. He's had a really good last 10 minutes of the game, and this is not an easy shot. On 50, running towards the boundary line.
Lasers
the pressure goal.
Well, they love his left foot, and wherever he loved his left foot last year as well. He played in the VFL Premiership, and it was crucial at the end in his second game. And these were the final moments now where the Swans were fighting so hard, Freo at home, so much was riding on his performance. And the Swans, if you look at early in the game, they kicked 0-5 in the first quarter to 4-3. They had to come back from a long way back.
And Riley Bice again.
And Riley Bice again, but they were risky. They took a risk with the ball and won the important contest, and lowered their eyes because all the Fremantle players were folding back, lowered their eyes, took the hit up, and then this is an excellent kick. And
Marty's body work here, I don't know whether Dean Cox was just out on his feet, but he just shifted him so easily. He's not exactly moving. We can see him right at the back of the screen there. Just pushes off, loses all the footwork, and then went back with the composure to finish.
And that shows a team that believes in themselves, to have the composure. This is a great set shot by Marty to kick the goal.
And this is the final plays coming up. Well, the Freo Dockers were potentially 2 seconds away from having a shot at goal to win the game. And that would have been it. The siren just went.
You could barely hear it, but the siren did go.
So Dean Cox's first win, an incredible moment for him. You've spoken about Hurdy and Jimmy, that they haven't been too bad the first 2 weeks. They've played against 2 pretty good teams, in the Hawks and the Brisbane Lions. The Fremantle Dockers kicking 9 goals, 11 at home. They're now 0-2, and question marks have to be around their game style, as there always is.
Well, Jimmy, you've been... he's just hit Dean Cox before. I mean, it's pretty exciting, your first win ever. I'm sure he was wondering if it was ever going to come. But the victory here, and you can see the elation in Dean Cox, and just I suppose, the relief.
Yeah, and on Freo's game style, I thought the first quarter was exactly how we want to see Freo play the game. Two of their first handful of goals came from that forward release handball into space, and they look so much better because you look at their forward mix. That man there, Tracy, the big kahuna, Tracy, and that was Amos, sorry. He kicked 4 goals. They just look so much more dynamic when they take the game forward. Even their half-backs, when Clark gets on the run, they break that first tackle, that forward handball, and they got goals from it. But Sydney were able to stifle them and get a lot of front half turnovers. And they're pretty lucky, Freo, that Sydney just couldn't convert, particularly towards half-time and the third quarter.
So they kicked 5 goals after quarter time, Hurdy, at home in perfect conditions.
Yeah, and 2 weeks in a row now they haven't performed. I mean, they performed for 3 quarters, but to 5 goals for that period of time and what they produced last week in Melbourne, questions will need to be answered.
And they've got a huge game against West Coast next week at home, which is even juicier than most derbies or derbies are at this time of the year. Let's set up Brisbane versus West Coast. And this was a game that started, again, in bizarre fashion, Jimmy. West Coast kicked the first 5, Brisbane 10 goals to 3 in the second half. In the end, the reigning premiers won by 19 points, but the Eagles gave it a crack. Yeah,
if you're watching via a nap, which a lot of people do, you're going, oh, they got the scores around the wrong way, but the Lions unveiled their flag, all the greats there, so good time for the Lions. But it was good to see the West Coast senior players in the first quarter in particular. Liam Baker, 8 touches, and Big McGovern, 7 down back. But it was a young Tyler Dewar, 20 and 2 goals. He kicked his 2 in the first quarter. Tim Kelly had 29 touches, but Lachie Neale bounced back from being well held by James Jordan last week, 35 and a goal, 10 inside forward 50s. And Zorko was dynamic with his ball use with 28 and 670 metres gained. It was good to see on a really positive note, Day out there playing after a really tough week, and our thoughts are with him. And the young debutant really got him going, Will McLaughlin, kicking a first goal in AFL footy. But Kel Archie, he's one of those players you just love having in the side. He's probably one of your first picked and one of your last you put in position because he can play midfield, forward, back. He kicked 3 goals in that third quarter, which helped the Lions get a bit of momentum and that resurgence, through the game. So the key players started to stand up. It's probably not a game that Fagan is overly happy with, but sometimes you just have to grind out and grit your teeth, and a bit of class and polish just overwhelmed West Coast in the end.
And tough conditions of playing, like 30 degrees, 100% humidity. I mean, playing a game at 110 in Brisbane this time of year.
Did they get it wrong? I noticed Jason Ackerman said that today. Is that poor fixturing from the AFL?
I think it is. I think you've got to be sensitive to players, and that's just too hot and too hard to play. And they're paid well. They play anywhere. But 30 degrees at 110 in Brisbane on a Sunday afternoon in March, that's not ideal.
I always love when players ride other players really hard, Jimmy. This is some of the body language from the Brisbane players today. I want your thoughts on this. Dane Zorko at quarter time when the Lions were down. Harris Andrews. Harris Andrews is a star in his own right, and as is Josh Dunkley. So that's Zorko. And then at other parts of the game as well, Jasper Fletcher, frustrated that he didn't get a handball, as you can see back there. And then Lachie Neale as well later on. So these players are riding each other very hard, but it's rare that you see it all in the one game, but they were clearly annoyed with each other given the way the Eagles were playing.
They were hot, they were bothered, they were frustrated. I'll tell you how many blues you have in December and January at training with your own teammates.
Please tell me.
When you've had an hour and a half of training and you bump into someone, you're exhausted. It was frustrating for them because West Coast were on top of them. It was supposed to be the big day. We unfurl the flag. We should be 5 goals up at quarter time. I've got no issue with that because the thing is it's direct, it's feedback. And do you know what happens? You follow up in at quarter time or half time, go, hey, all I wanted from you was this, or can you do this next time? The amount of times I cop sprays like that from teammates and none of it was personal.
Who gave you the biggest spray?
Oh, plenty, because you don't take it personal in a game.
Stevie J?
Stevie J, everyone's scarlet.
I'm going to say that the Zorko one I liked. I liked the fact he was that's the leadership group, having a go at each other, keeping them honest. The one where you don't get a handball and throwing, that's the one you go, hang on, that's not on.
Andrew McQualter, post-game, discussed the hottest property in the AFL, Harley Reid, and some of his, frustrations on the field.
We try to bash the theatre out of this game sometimes, don't we? Like, just, he's just having a bit of fun. Sometimes that's good for the game, I think.
So you can see here, Harley Reid played a game that he probably would like to have again. He was the 33rd ranked player in the field according to Champion Data. There's been a bit of this over the journey as well. He's been called unfit. He's been called out of shape. He's clearly frustrated. My understanding is he's not overly happy at the moment. Whether that leads to anything at the end of the year, we'll have to wait and see, given he's still contracted for 2026. Wears his heart on his sleeve. This is the moment where he got a free kick down the field, Jimmy and Hurdy, and then he flipped the bird to the crowd, which the AFL might have a word at tomorrow. What do you make of the whole Harley Reid situation?
He's 19. And we constantly ask for an old head on young shoulders. Like, give us a spell. Like, he's just working out AFL football. He's shown he's got the ability and talent. He's shown he can be a match winner. But you know what happens with most 19-year-olds? You go like that. It's difficult. You're playing against the reigning premier. Up on
So
their
how do you
home
coach it then?
Let's just get his own. We'd get a new TV channel for Harley Reid. There's that much content he's producing. We could just have our own.
Well, people are interested in Harley Reid.
I know
whether
they
like
are,
it or
but
not.
it gets to the point. For me, look, he's 19 years old. We have our own TV show. We could just do this show totally on Harley Reid.
How would you coach Harley Reid, though? Would you let him do what he wants?
No, he's got to play within a structure. You give him a structure, he does what you want in that structure, do it that way. But if he steps out of line, you bring him back in.
Love it.
You can't have all the same personalities in a football team.
I agree.
If you have 22 football dorks, you'll never win a game. And if you have 22 rogues and lads, you'll never win a game.
You never did your own thing on the ground, did you? I've spoken to a couple of your coaches. You
Go to an advert time,
all
go
the
to-
time.
22 Stevie Jacks would be quite funny. We're going to talk about Carlton after the break. They're in the headlines again. But Monday night on Channel 9 is Footy Classified with Sammy and Jimmy, of course, and of course Damien Barrett and Matthew Lloyd. And Tuesday night, we've got a special guest, gentlemen. We've got my old friend Luke Beveridge joining us
Can't
at the
wait.
desk with Eddie
Boxing gloves on.
and Herdy. That's going to be a ripper. Can't wait to have the Western Bulldogs coach in the studio. Stay with us on Footy Furnace. Plenty more to come in a few moments' time.